Best.
There you go.
Okay. Hi there. I'm getting ready to begin, and we are present, if anything. Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you're tuning in from. Please like and comment below and share with someone who can benefit from the great topic that we will be discussing today on the show. Welcome to Extraordinary Women of Guts and Grace, a podcast about compassionate, courageous leadership. And my intention is to inspire other women and the next generation of leaders. Hi there, my name's Evelyn Cosme. I'm the CEO of Evelyn Cosme International, and I'm a leadership and empowerment strategist for your life and for your work. And I'm really passionate about activating the leader within high achieving women, entrepreneurs, for instance, professionals and leaders, especially to help them improve the quality of their lives and work, creating the life work balance they desire. And you know how when we're on top of our game, something can happen to kind of like take us off our path. It could be that we're triggered with emotional trauma from the past, a crisis, or a life transition. And that's when I come in to help you process all of that and get back on track with a method that I've developed throughout the years that's very successful in helping women do just that. Now, my guest today is very special because I've known her for 20 years. We've collaborated on so many projects together, helping the community to improve the quality of their lives in different ways. Her name is Dr. Cooper Holyfield, and she's a holistic health practitioner and promoter and a well aging expert, which is something I love. Our topic for today is reversing diabetes. Hello, Dr. Holifield. Thank you so much for being here. Would you please greet the audience?
Hello, Evelyn Cosme, and hello, each and every one of you. I bring you greetings of health and wellness from Unique Lifestyles, and I am Dr. Cooper Holyfield. I'm so happy to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Dr. Holyfield is so busy, and she agreed to speak to me today on the show so that you can benefit from this very important topic of reversing diabetes. And I so appreciate that you took time to do this. Now, when we talk about Dr. Cooper Holyfield, let's get a feel for her history. And living your best life is the motto that Dr. Cooper Holyfield believes in for herself and for others. Dr. Holyfield is a holistic doctor of divinity, a gerontologist, and healthcare practitioner. She uses health promotions and well aging principles that encompass the whole body and mind. Her mission is to promote overcoming adversities as we age. And diabetes is one such health adversity that she is dedicated to working strategically to prevent and reverse as possible. Dr. Holyfield has been reversing diabetes for more than 30 years. She is a CDC educated diabetes prevention lifestyle coach. And for those of you that don't know what CDC is, it's Center for Disease Control. And her passion is teaching strategies on how to reverse diabetes, save money, so important, and have better health care. Helping the cause to reverse diabetes, high blood pressure, weight issues, and teaching better techniques for managing life stressors, so many of them right now. And you'll be able to explore her website. And I'll be posting that below so that you can reach out to her. And lots of other information I'll be posting as well so that you can contact her, reach out to her, and also enjoy some of the products that she promotes for health and wellness and well aging. Live your best life, her motto. Now, Dr. Holyfield, your first question. Are you ready to be ready?
I am ready to be ready.
Awesome. Now, what did you want to be when you grew up? What was it that little Dr. Holyfield would play at? How does it align with who you have become now at this time?
Well, that is a great question. When I think back to when I was a little girl, I used to dream of actually, believe it or not, I wanted to be an advocate against drugs and alcohol and other types of behaviors that led to a lot of hurt and pain in people's lives. And I wanted to be a singer, believe it or not. And
I didn't know that about you.
yeah, that was my dream. I wanted to be a singer, but I always saw myself as advocating for better health and wellness for people, even from the time I was in elementary school.
So definitely it has transferred over to the work that you do, because when I met you 20 years ago, you were doing just that, advocating for others and helping them and coordinating for them different services and to have access to things that they had a right to have access to, that a lot of people don't know what's available to them, but you were always there to do that, which is something I always admired about you. Now, we are living, Dr. Holyfield, in times of great uncertainty and many more under stress, more now than ever, actually, and for all the reasons that we can think of, and it would probably be 2 or 3 hours worth of conversation if we do. But what are your impressions of the effects it's causing on people's health right now?
Well, I recently took an online course called Psychological First Aid, Supporting Yourself and Others During COVID-19. I believe today we all need to learn better techniques for managing and overcoming distress, stress, drama, and I called it strama. That is a
yes.
Stress and trauma. And I, along with many others, have had to redefine our priorities during this time to begin focus on our individual health and well-being and learn how to better survive during times of adversity and uncertainty with hope for a better tomorrow. So I think that is the impression of the effects that is causing on people's health at this time of life. We're having to focus more on our individual selves and on those that we love.
Yes, absolutely. And now, how does this translate for diabetes? Are you noticing a trend of an increase of cases? Are people more affected, not managing it too well because of the added stress factors? What are your thoughts with that?
Yeah, I definitely have seen an increase in diabetes and pre-diabetes. I've heard many coin the term the COVID-10. I had that as well, and then it went to the COVID-15. Those are extra pounds that we've gained during this time of isolation or quarantining, social distancing at home. We were less active. And so with weight gain, especially when it's around the middle section of our bodies, that also tends to increase pre-diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and so on. So there definitely has been a link between the times of today and diabetes. But we have some solutions.
That's wonderful. And that was my next question. How can we prevent it from happening? Let's start with that. Someone's relatively healthy. What would be the way to prevent diabetes?
Well, the way to prevent diabetes, I think first, in order to understand what diabetes is, we have to address that. The diabetes occurs when the body is unable to regulate the amount of glucose in the blood. Carbohydrate foods are broken down to produce glucose, causing the blood glucose levels to rise. And carbohydrates are foods, living tissues that include starches, sugars, cellulose. And carbohydrates are found in plant-based foods, broccoli, carrots, cabbage, sweet potatoes, cucumbers, apples, some of my favorite things, potatoes. But they're also found in sugar, corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup, fruit juice concentrates, soda, candy, chips, cakes, white bread, and one of my favorite chocolate chip cookies.
Ooh, I know that. You always had some around your desk.
I know I've had to change a lot of habits. So that glucose is primary in diabetes, and it comes from the foods that we eat. And at the point of diabetes, the pancreas is involved. And the pancreas makes insulin to help get the glucose into the cells in our bodies. What happens as your glucose levels increase and the insulin is not able to help it work properly, the pancreas eventually gets worn out from working so hard. So we have to watch the foods that we eat. I can go on about the breakdown of the foods and the pancreas and the insulin because they all work together, but eventually our bodies just begin to overwork in trying to compensate for the foods that we take into our mouth. So in order for us to begin reversing diabetes, that is the first thing we have to look at, our intake of foods, the food choices that we make, and the amount of food intake that we take in.
So it applies for both prevention and reversing diabetes.
Right.
Okay.
Both of them go hand in hand.
Okay. Now, diabetes is segmented or characterized in 1, 2. Could you explain a little bit about that? And when is it really critical? And the type of management and what is the lesser of the evils to call it that way?
Okay, well, this is what I'll explain. I'm going to go back and explain back how food is ingested in the glucose that's in our bodies. After we ingest foods, glucose is released in the small intestine during digestion, and the pancreas helps your body to digest the foods. The pancreas also makes insulin in the blood, and when it senses glucose in the blood, tiny blood vessels take the insulin and glucose in the body to the cells. So glucose, once it is inside the cell, helps with the help of the insulin. It changes the cell for energy use. So I like to think of it as being energized or charged up for use. And glucose can be used immediately or stored. So with normal blood glucose, an overnight fasting glucose rate of 99 or lower is called normal. Once inside the cell, the glucose is converted into energy to be used right then, or it is stored for later. But as glucose moves from the bloodstream into the cells, the blood levels start to drop. And so what happens is the type of diabetes that you're diagnosed with has a direct correlation to the level of glucose that's in your body. So there are 4 types of diabetes. Diabetes 1, which is resulting from the body's failure to produce insulin, the hormone that unlocks the cells of the body, allowing the glucose to enter and fuel them. This diabetes is directly linked to the pancreas. Type 2 diabetes is a fasting blood glucose level over 125, which indicates diabetes. Then you also have prediabetes. And that is when your fasting blood glucose level is between 100 and 125. And most people with type 2 diabetes are unfortunately overweight. And then there is a fourth type of diabetes called gestational diabetes, which is pregnancy related. So the diagnosis of diabetes is directly correlated to the level of glucose that we have in our blood.
And how dangerous is that for the mother and for the infant?
When it comes down to gestational diabetes, I actually had gestational diabetes about 30 years ago. And at that time, and I believe it is still the same practice, you have to go on insulin because your body is definitely impacted, and it can impact your growing child. A lot of times children who are born to mothers who have gestational diabetes, they tend to be much larger at birth. And so there are lots of complications that can happen. And you have to remember, too, I am not a medical doctor. I am a gerontologist. So most of the information that I have...
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but define gerontologist for some people that may not be familiar with the term.
Well, gerontologist is the study of aging. So I studied the psychological, the physiological, the emotional components, all areas that's correlated with the body as we age. And my focus was in mental health as well as health care to learn how to help individuals age well with the goal of living to be 100 or plus. So the difference between the gerontologist is I didn't have to do all of the clinicals that are correlated with aging. And I don't treat or perform any surgeries, but I have a massive amount of information related to how we age, what is normal, and what is considered abnormal with aging.
Okay, thank you. And now, when it comes to diabetes, is this something that only people who are aging can develop?
No, diabetes, unfortunately, is affecting the population as a whole. Children are diagnosed with diabetes, men, women, children. It is not an old age disease, and it is not a young age disease. It's a disease that is correlated with our food intake and how our body effectively uses glucose. And it has a direct impact on your pancreas, on your liver, on your heart, on your eyes. That's why it is called a comorbid disease, because it affects many different areas of our body. So, no, to answer that, it is not an old age disease. It is correlated with our diet and lack of other activities, as well as some correlation with type 1 diabetes is related to the pancreas.
Now, when it comes to children, maybe a parent has more say in their diet and is able to control it a little bit more. But when it's a teenager, a pre-adolescent, an adolescent, the hormones are also raging. How difficult is it for them to be able to stabilize the treatment of diabetes?
Well, when it comes to type 2 diabetes, there are many things that can be done concerning the amount of physical activity that we get, the amount of water that we drink, the amount of stress that we get. So there are a lot of controllable factors related to diabetes and helping to prevent and reverse that in children, teenagers, and in adults.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And now you mentioned it affects just about everything in the body. How about eyesight? I've known people who have had issues and have gone even completely blind and did have a history of diabetes. Could you talk a little bit about that correlation and how that develops?
Yes. When it comes down to our eyes, diabetes affects our eyes because the vessels in our bodies, the tiny little veins and things, are trying to take the blood all over our bodies, trying to help get sources of energy to everything that is needed. And diabetes can lead to swelling of the eye, and this swelling is usually called diabetic macular edema. The edema is part of your retina that you need for reading, driving, and seeing faces. This is a part of a group of eye problems, diabetic eye disease, with conditions that include diabetic retinopathy, of course, diabetic macular edema, cataracts, and glaucoma. Over time, diabetes can cause damage to your eyes that can lead to poor vision and even blindness. High blood pressure can change the fluids levels or swelling in the tissues of your eyes that help you to focus. This can lead to blurry vision. It may go away when your glucose levels get closer to normal. But if the blood glucose levels remain high, it can cause damage to the tiny blood vessels in the back of your eyes. The damage can begin whenever blood glucose is higher than normal, and this includes during pre-diabetes diagnoses. Damage to the tiny vessels in your eye cause swelling to build up and leaking fluid from the vessel, and this can lead to bleeding in the middle part of the eye. It can lead to scarring. It could cause dangerously high pressure inside of your eye. And
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No problem. I was going to say it can be reversed at certain stages.
Really?
You can take to prevent diabetic eye disease or even keep it from getting worse. But you have to do it by taking care of yourself prior to the diagnosis of diabetes. You have to manage your blood glucose, your blood pressure, and cholesterol. And if you smoke, you have to get help needed to quit smoking. I encourage everyone to always seek medical advice from a doctor for treatment options while you work on holistic alternatives. There's certain times and points. Now, I have a lot of faith. I believe that anything is possible, but I also operate with wisdom. And we do need to consult physicians and medical advice and to follow the treatment options when it comes to nerve damages, because there are a lot of things that could be going on inside of the body that could impact your eye and your vision outside of diabetes. So it's always a good idea to follow up with the physician, but do the things to take care of yourself. That way we can either help to prevent vision loss from getting worse and to help heal the body from the inside out. So,
diabetes is no joke, ladies and gentlemen. This is a very serious condition. And there's so many families that generationally have diabetes, correct?
Yes, it is very much linked to families. Now, I have my own theory, and as I said, I'm not a medical doctor, so my theory is a lot of individuals and families are diagnosed with some of the same exact things because we tend to have a very similar diet. If we're in a household together, we tend to eat the same foods, and those foods, we tend to have some similar reactions on our bodies. And many times we have the same lifestyle. If there's a family that exercises a lot, eats healthy, enjoys a very active life, sometimes some family members follow, and then sometimes we don't. But we tend to follow the one who eats really delicious foods, down and watch the television and go to sleep, and we're not getting the physical activity that's needed to help burn up that glucose, to help use the fuel that we're feeding our bodies. We're not using it. So we have a overabundance of storage.
Okay. And so then that brings me to the question about weight fluctuations due to diabetes. But women alone can have great fluctuations for a number of reasons. So talk to us about that, please.
Well, what can be done about weight fluctuations? One of my quickest answers is exercise regularly. For at least 30 minutes of physical activity at least 3 times a week, because when you exercise, your body needs extra energy from your blood sugar, from the glucose. And when you do something quickly, like a sprint or a quick little jog, your muscle and your liver releases the glucose for fuel. So one of the best ways, in addition to having a moderate diet and drinking plenty of water, is to exercise, because this begins to use up that stored glucose, as well as when we have meals, if we exercise and we take a nice little brisk walk after eating, your muscles begin to receive that glucose that you just took in, as well as begin to utilize some of the stored glucose in our body for fuel.
So if what's the latest someone should eat? There's so many theories on that. Don't eat after 6, don't eat after 5 or 7, or what do you believe to be the best option or suggestion in terms of that?
Well, I recommend having at least 12 hours between your last meal at night and your first meal the following morning.
Okay.
It gives you time to burn up and process the foods that you've taken, and to help to get you going and be prepared for the next day. But it is very important not to skip meals. So you want to set time. Yep, you want to set your time and whatever's going to be convenient for your lifestyle. But give yourself that 12-hour interval between eating. Some people call it intermittent fasting. I just like to think of it as a healthy practice.
And how about grazing? The people call grazing, eating every 2 or 3 hours throughout the day, small foods that are healthy, whether it's a vegetable, a piece of fruit, and even fruit we have to reconsider when it comes to the sugar level, right?
We definitely do, but the sugars that's in fruits are very different. They are a lot more healthier than the sugars that's in cookies or pastries. So I think, however you're getting your meals, because some people do not have large appetites, but if they're breaking it down into smaller meals and they're able to receive the nutrition that's needed for their individual bodies, because we want to make sure that we're still eating, because we need fuel every day, but we're eating appropriate portion sizes. And I believe as long as that is done, where you are maintaining that 12-hour interval between the last meal at night and the first meal in the beginning of the morning, I think however you get your meals in, that can, whatever works for the individual person and their lifestyle.
Okay. And then when it comes to diabetes, are there any significant differences between diabetes for a man, a woman, and children? Or is it basically the same?
Well, Evelyn, according to research, Men are showing more susceptibility to the consequences of obesity and sitting still. It's possibly related to insulin sensitivity as well as the body fat composition. I know we've seen a lot of men tend to have what one may call the beer belly. Certain circumferences around the middle are more pre-factors for diabetes. But when it comes down to women, women often have more serious complications and a greater risk of death.
Oh, wow.
But even that being said, yeah, males with diabetes have been linked to living 7.5 years less than those males without diabetes. And children in the past were diagnosed more with type 1 diabetes, but today nearly 1 in 5 adolescents between the ages of 12 and 18 are also pre-diabetic. So diabetes in terms of how it works and the diagnosis, those numbers do not change. Blood sugar levels at 125 above, that's type 2 diabetes. But the effects that it has on the body, I think that correlates to the lifestyles that we live. If we tend to have more of a sedentary lifestyle, then the effects of diabetes can be greater on those individuals than the ones who maintain a healthy diet and physical activity and drink lots of water.
Now, with all of that said, how about food production? Does any of the way that food is produced nowadays affecting and causing perhaps conditions like diabetes compared to many more years in the past, for instance, maybe over 40, 50, 60 years ago?
Well, I can just talk about myself in terms of going back a couple of years. I'm not going to date myself, but in the earlier days, foods like cakes and pastries and ice cream, they were definitely occasional treats. They were something was looked at as maybe something that we would have after a Sunday dinner or Christmas time and Thanksgiving. They were treats. Now we can treat ourselves every single day of the week.
Oh, yes.
And so the foods that are being produced are definitely a lot more processed foods that have a lot of the foods, the simple sugars, the glucose, the corn syrup, the higher fructose corn syrup, all different kind of chemicals that we cannot normally pronounce. And our bodies are not designed to break down all of those. As we discussed earlier, that the insulin plays a part with the carbohydrates to try to get it inside of the cells. And at a certain point in time, the cells do not recognize that food and it will not allow the glucose to enter in. Then we have a surplus. So the foods that are being produced, mass-produced food, although they may taste lovely to our taste buds, our internal bodies are not able to always break them down. So we have seen an increase in diabetes, especially in children, because they enjoy cakes and cookies and soda and ice cream and cheeseburgers and French fries and all those things.
Oh, boy, I'm hungry already.
And that is the struggle, because this is readily available. And we have to really be conscious about the choices that we make, with the lifestyles that we choose to lead. It can be tough, but we can do it.
Great. And then what suggestions would you give to a woman or anyone who may have symptoms of diabetes or any condition at all? What would be the first step? How should they go about getting this addressed in the proper way?
I would say get some proper rest. You wouldn't necessarily think that that will correlate with diabetes, but getting the amount of proper rest has been shown to help manage and reduce diabetes. According to the CDC, losing sleep, even just one night or too little sleep, can make your body use insulin less efficiently. And eat breakfast in the morning. We are so busy a lot of times, men, women, even children, that we get up, get dressed, and we're out of the house. Do not skip breakfast. It has been known, it has been researched that going without breakfast and morning meal can increase your blood sugars after both your lunch and your dinner. So in order to help manage the blood sugars, we have to start being conscious. Even if we get up and we grab an apple in the morning, a little bowl of oatmeal, grab something nutritious, even a carrot, broccoli. So, but don't skip the meals, get some rest, and drink water.
So water is very important, and we know that water is of great essence. It's a blessing in our lives. We use it to quench our thirst. It's very beneficial to the body in general and its functioning. And we bathe in it. We can be transported over water. Water is such an amazing element, and using it wisely and as often as needed is key, most definitely. Now, Dr. Holyfield, give us some tips or strategies of what has worked for you to be successful.
Well, what has worked for me? As I share with you, I was diagnosed with gestational diabetes over 30 years ago. I was able to reverse that and maintain it. I was diagnosed with gestational diabetes again, like about 20 years ago. I was able to reverse that and manage. And as studies have shown, after 10 years of being diagnosed with gestational diabetes, the average woman will unfortunately be diagnosed with diabetes, and that was my case. So I had to learn how to reverse that and manage it. But it came with lifestyle changes, because I was diagnosed with gestational diabetes twice because I continued to eat the same foods that I had ate all along. But this last time when I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and that was about 10 years ago, I had to get serious about my body and accept the fact that my body was not able to process the sugars, as I called it. Now I know it's the glucose, and I understand how the pancreas was having to work really, really hard to try to help counter the foods that I was eating. So I began to do some research. I eliminated a lot of the foods with high fructose corn syrup. That was a start. I began to exercise more frequently, and I began to take more water. Now, 64 ounces of water was recommended, but nutritionalists advise drinking half of your body weight in ounces. So if a person is 160,
that's a lot of water.
That is, if they're 160 pounds, then 80 ounces is recommended, because water helps not only to hydrate your blood, but it helps to lower your blood sugar levels and reduce diabetes risk. So I began to implement all of those strategies in my life, and I have been able to reverse diabetes. I have to watch it, because once you have an issue with how your pancreas is working, how your liver is working, how all your organs are working, if you continue to do the same things that you did before your diagnosis, even a pre-diabetes, no change is going to happen. You have to change. You have to decide that you're going to live. You can live a healthy, wonderful life. You can enjoy life, but you have to begin to be more conscious of your diet and your resting habits, your stress management. All of these things come into play, which makes us a healthy adult, a healthy child, a healthy man, woman, a healthy person, or an unhealthy person. It all goes back to the choices that we make and how we deal with life stressors.
Now, this reminds me, because it affects the organs and so many parts of the body, how does this impact diabetes impact sexuality?
Well,
Does it?
diabetes, diabetes affects the blood flow.
Oh,
So, as I said, just as a gerontologist, what I have learned about the blood flow, when our blood is thicker, because the higher your blood glucose levels are, you have more of thickening of the blood. I like to equate it to syrup as compared.
Wow.
Water is more fluid. Syrup, if you take a bottle of syrup and you turn it upside down, it is going to take a longer period of time to flow down to the bottom. That is what's happening in our bodies. So it's very serious. So if blood flow is what causes even sexual arousal, you have to think the higher the blood glucose level is, the longer it's going to take for that blood flow to go down to the various parts of our bodies.
Wow.
So we just keep that in mind. We go back from the physiological aspect of aging. We got to keep that blood flowing properly. Got to get lots of water in our bodies, and we have to make sure that we help to have our blood as fluid as possible.
So this is definitely a deterrent to stack up on the chocolate chip cookies, the ice cream, and all the other things that we indulge in daily at times. And you're so right about how before ice cream and cookies or a cake was used to celebrate some special occasion or during a holiday. And now we do have such an array, such a selection of cookies and cakes that are ready-made, so easy to buy from the dollar store. I mean, all types, all price ranges, for all tastes and desires. And we have become a very indulgent society as a whole in many ways, and food is one that we should be very careful on how we use it. It serves as fuel for our bodies. It helps our bodies to grow and to develop. But what Dr. Holyfield is saying is such serious information that she's sharing with us that we really need to take heed. Now, mention how people can contact you, Dr. Holyfield, if they'd like more information or to access any of the products that you provide.
Yes, I can be reached at Dr. Cooper Holyfield at gmail.com. And before we end, I want everyone to know that we can still enjoy foods. You can still enjoy cakes and pies and ice creams and chips and cookies. You can enjoy all those things. This is not about not enjoying them. But look at the serving size on the containers of what you're eating, because it will tell you the amount of calories, the carbohydrates in it, and so on. Let's look at having more moderate portion sizes. And after you enjoy desserts, get outside, go for a walk, get on the treadmill at your home if you have to. Put a video on, look at YouTube, put an exercise video on, a walking exercise. sit down, use some weights, whatever it is that you need to do and that you can do for your body to help to begin to burn that glucose up. It's not just about weight loss and working out with heavy weights. It's having physical activity so that we can have the energy that is needed to live life to the fullest, to age well. So once again, I can be reached at Dr. Cooper Holyfield at gmail.com.
And just so that the audience knows, like I always do, we'll be posting all of Dr. Holifield's contact information, her website, and other information as well, right in the comment section below the video. And thank you so much for all of that, because you know what that means? Dr. Holyfield, I can't eat my Haagen-Dazs ice cream the whole pint, and I really usually do that watching a great movie. But you know, we really aren't in the habit of actually looking at that portion size in the back. You know, we overlook it, and even if we do, we just go on and eat and eat and eat. And in my case, when I have a little bit of ice cream, I need something salty, so I can have some chips or something. And I don't know, sometimes I have the chips first and then the ice cream, or the ice cream first. I never know how it's going to end up. It depends on my stress levels, I think, because that's a way of reaching out to kind of like soothe myself, the comfort food, as they call it, which is absolutely not very good food. But I will take heed to that, Dr. Holyfield, most definitely, because I can notice how being at home, the pounds have had added themselves by just snacking, working late, being online all the time. This has changed everyone's body composition in some way or somehow. If you're not maintaining yourself, exercising, drinking the water, and resting, because we're at home, we might tend to stay up late, watching television or YouTube or gaming, etc. So this is very serious information. I do appreciate that you shared your knowledge with us and your experience. And I do hope that a lot of people reach out to you to get some questions answered and find some solutions that are healthy. And that there's so many options, and I know that you'll guide them through that process. Now, we're coming to an end, sadly, and I'd like to thank our special guest, Dr. Cooper Holyfield, the holistic health promoter and practitioner and well-aging expert. Dr. Cooper, would you like to say some words before I close out the episode with the audience?
Yes, you have been an exceptional host, podcast moderator, friend, woman, all the above. I definitely am so excited and thankful that to be here and to have shared the knowledge that I have, as well as to receive the knowledge that you have as well. I think this has been extraordinary, and I look forward to the next time. And to everyone that is listening, I wish you health, wellness, love, peace, and joy. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And for some announcements before I say goodbye, please book a complimentary 30-minute session for a tip or a new perspective on that thing that's keeping you up at night. And maybe you're ready to start some work of your own, and we should have a discussion to see if we're a match to work together on whatever it is that you need to improve upon and work on, expand, and learn strategies that will help you improve the quality of your life and your work performance. Now, another announcement that I have is to be on the lookout, because I'll be launching a course that will be on one of the course platforms by the end of April about emotional reset. And also, I'll be announcing as well that you'll be able to access for free a video about emotions. It's an introduction to emotions, but I think it's something that will help everyone to understand themselves when it comes to their emotions and people around them, because life is about relationships. Everything is our relationship to ourselves, to others, and our environment. And how well and effectively we do that and process our emotions and act towards each other is of great importance for our happiness and our peace of mind as well. Now, as I always sign off, much self-love, much compassion with yourself and benevolence. It's so important, and you deserve it. I deserve it. Dr. Holyfield deserves it too, and everyone does. Keep the peace. Much love. Bye. Thank you again, Dr. Cooper Holyfield. It was great having you on the show. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.